on this computer. Okay, here we go. Hey, listeners. So we're doing something a little different this time. Actually, we've done it in the past, but we're just doing it again. Let me just say that we're doing it again. So this episode will be available on the YouTube channel as well at Maxetta Gad, Chatting with Maxie. It will also be published as a podcast episode. So I'm excited for today's guest. She is not just a guest, and she's much more than just a friend to me. I have Betsy Morris with me today, and Betsy is someone super special in my life. I consider her a spiritual mentor. She has walked me through many, 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 many things over the course of our friendship. I have learned so much from her that I knew she was a voice that we needed to get to you all. Okay. So she represents many things and has many stories she could share. But today I ask her to zero in on being a military mama. Right. So her son, Ben Morris, was in the military, and she'll tell you a little more about that. But during his time in the military, he was also deployed. And I did not have a personal correlation with someone being deployed until I met Betsy. We were actually friends during his deployments. So I watched, as a mother, I watched another mother have to trust God on a whole different level, I think, with her child. We all trust God with our children, but this was just something very deep for me, a very intense trust that I hadn't seen before. So I was like, Betsy's got to be on here. She's got to be the voice of the military moms. Now, we are focusing on the moms because Betsy and I are moms, but what she's going to share with you, she'll share about Ben's dad, which is Betsy's husband, John. And Ben also has a sibling, Greg Morris, his brother, and any of the extended family that she wants to share about. But I'm real excited for you to hear about her. You may know Betsy from Camp Caesar. She was the director there for a while. She has since transitioned into another role. She has, as I said, she and John have 2 adult children, and those children have families, and I'll let you share whatever she wants to about them. But the gentleman we're focusing on tonight is Ben, and Ben is in Hawaii. Okay. So, I mean, who doesn't want to be in Hawaii? Betsy's made a trip or 2 over there. But Betsy, hey, we're glad to have you. Super glad.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you. I'm so pleased as punch to be here tonight.
Yeah.
So thank you for the opportunity.
So please add anything to that introduction that you want to add, or correct anything that may need corrected.
Oh, I don't have anything to add to that introduction. I'm flattered, beyond flattered, and an opportunity to represent military families in any capacity is something I think any military family member would do. And it's a whole different lifestyle when you are part of a military family and you're the extended network, for them. So I'm pleased to get to be here to represent all those mamas and those parents that are out there, and and husbands, and even mothers now are deployed and doing stints in the military.
Right. Yeah.
How difficult that is for the family.
Yeah.
And so that's the aspect I want to bring, is just encouragement to those families, as they're traveling through that time with a family member in the military, and how you encourage yourself and you conduct yourself out in where others will see you, and you can become that role model for your soldier.
Yeah. Fantastic. That is fantastic. Now, listening. I hope people are listening, and they will be. But I was going to say, listen to the viewers and the listeners. You will see my cup if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast, you'll hear my ice go swishy, swishy. Your girl's got to have a little something to wet her whistle during this conversation. So, we're all friends here, and if we need a little sippy sip, we're going to have one. Betsy's probably sipping water. I have completed my water for the day. I'm having a little Pepsi. Okay.
It's needed. It's needed.
Right.
I mean, like, we got to be good grandmas now. Like, we got to have energy.
That's right. That is right. Yes, indeed. Okay. So let's talk about Ben.
Okay.
When did he decide, hey, I want to join the military? Was this something he had talked about as a young boy, or did it just come out of the blue as a surprise?
When I started reflecting on that question, and when you and I talked about the things that we might talk, topics we might touch on, I am not surprised that Ben chose the military as a career. As a child, he grew up on GI Joe,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we had every GI Joe figure. We had all the little pieces of equipment. We watched the TV show every day. He just
Mhm.
always had a pull
Mhm.
towards the military, right? And that adventure,
Yeah.
because on the cartoon they make it look quite adventurous, and
Yeah.
the bad guy was never another country, right? It
Right.
was Cobra,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
his name, and so it made Christmas pretty easy for John and I because, whatever the new GI Joe, they were huge, they were great big, whatever pieces of equipment they were, and and you would just buy those and he would just be happy, right? Little GI Joe sent him off to school and a GI Joe
Mhm.
lunchbox. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
9 yards.
So it
And
kind of started early. I mean, his
yeah,
interest in that. Yeah.
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 And John has an uncle, and he was retired military. And at one point, he was the highest ranking uh, retired Air Force person in the state of West Virginia. And his name was Floyd Gerwig. And he was just an inspiration to everybody. And Ben just would listen and talk to Floyd. And I have a feeling in my heart, I've never asked Ben where that came from, but I have a feeling in my heart that that was his first indication that he wanted to be in the military
Mhm.
because I didn't have anybody directly in my family. Like he wasn't carrying on a family
Right.
tradition, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so this came about. But, um, you know, I have heard it said that we live life forward and we understand it backwards, right? And so now that I look back at Ben's life, I can look at that and I can say God used every part of his, you know, growing up and the things that he loved to do, the characters and the traits that he had, the experiences that he had to mold him into this soldier that he would become, right?
That's
And so
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it really is, and so when Ben got ready to graduate, high school, he didn't really wanna go on the college track, that just wasn't something he wanted. He liked, outdoors, he liked to be in competition, he liked to do those kinds of things, right? And so, um, out of his welding class, Mike Gray sent them up, it was time to take the ASVABs, and Ben's like, I don't really have a career plan. This is going to be good. He went up and took the ASVABs and didn't say a word to us. We did not have a clue that he had done that. And so the recruiter shows up at our door, right?
Oh,
Hello.
wow. Yeah. Huh.
And my husband's like, well, no, you can't have my son. And
That's what I was thinking. I was like,
no, you can't have him. He's ours.
yeah.
And but Ben wanted to do that. It was a
Yeah.
career choice that he wanted. And at that time, that was in 2001, and probably in April of 2001, and we were in a military conflict, right? And so, in mine and John's eyes, we were like, yeah. This will be a good choice for Ben. He'll do 3 years in the military. He'll get all these benefits all through life and la 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 la. We kind of planned his future out for him as we do with parents.
Oh, boy,
And
don't
so,
we? Yeah. Yeah, that happens. Mhm.
yep. And then we just greatly learned that, that how hard it was going to be. And Ben, John wasn't near as ready for Ben to leave as, his mother, and John had worked he was away, and so it was just me and the boys at the house. He worked away. He was home on the weekends. And so when it came time for us to take Ben down, you take him to the office, and they swear them in, right? He does his oath and he signs his papers and things. I just didn't think John was going to be able. He didn't go. It was his mother that took him.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not
Oh,
sure
wow.
John ever really forgave me for that a couple times. I think he threw it
Yeah.
up in my fight in those, moments when you're
Yeah.
so tense, when life was so tense, that'll slip out and it'll be, "Well, you took him."
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
did. Yes, I
Hey,
did.
Betsy, which branch is he in? The
He's in the Army.
the Army. That's right.
He's in the Army.
I
Mhm.
failed to mention that. I should have, but yes.
Yeah,
But
yep,
actually, I'm sure the feelings and experiences that you're going through, any military parent will have very similar, if
Mhm,
not exactly very similar feelings
mhm.
and
And
experiences.
it's very, it's a very, prestigious,
Yes. Yes, it is.
trait, that
Mm,
they choose vocation that they choose to follow, right? And
yes,
so I was just so proud when I took him
yes.
down there to be sworn in. And, and hey, this was gonna be good. They come to your house and they take your child, right? And they put him in the back of a car with a short little bag, and they'll tell you they'll send his things home, and he's
Stop,
gone.
what? What?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's how they do that. Like, they come to the house and they get you. They
Didn't know
pick you up
that.
and they take you away. Yeah.
So that you didn't, like, take him and drop him off, they come to the house.
Mhm, mhm.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
and John just it was such a hard day for him to let Ben go. It
yeah.
was so hard, so hard. And yep, and he went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for his basic training, right? And so yeah, you go to the MEP Center. I'm sure he did all the processing things that they do. And then he went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for his basic training.
Isn't that something? I did
Mhm.
not know that. So they rolled where were you guys? Were you at Camp Caesar at the time?
No, no, no,
No, you
no.
were at the Blue House,
We
let's
went
just
at the
call it.
Blue House, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
we were,
And
yeah,
so in pulls this oh gosh, I did not know that. I mean, we even talked
yep.
before this. So, and I just missed that. I mean, you might have said it, I
No,
completely
I
forgot.
don't think I said that, I don't
I
think I
learned
did.
so much from you during that call that, so in pulls this car.
Yep,
Oh gosh, it always takes my breath away. Like, so
yep,
in pulls this car, and you know what time they're gonna be there, I'm assuming, like
yep,
they're coming
yep,
on this
mhm,
date at this time. And so let's talk about those like 30 minutes before. Are y'all just walking around the house? You
yep.
having a snack? You giving him a hug? What's happening there?
You just keep reassuring them that the choice that they've made is honorable, and that, that God is gonna watch out, he's gonna protect him,
Yeah,
and from, all through Benjamin's military career, the Lord has reminded me of the scriptures that you pray for your children, and, I think as parents, when we start listening to the voice of God and he gives us those scriptures, we don't realize the longevity of that prayer, right? We don't
right.
see
That's right.
where that's going to be
Mhm.
in, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And so, one of the scriptures that we prayed for Ben throughout his life was, and I would tell you that it is in Luke, and it was a scripture that was just for Ben, and it was, and the child grew and became strong in spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. And I would pray that for Ben, not really ever knowing where his path in life was going to lead him. And the Lord would take me back to that so many times.
Yeah,
And as we got ready for him to leave, of course, we had prayer. We had lots of prayer, you
sure.
know, um, and it's not like, me, I probably gave him 6 snacks and,
Mhm.
here's they give you a list of the things he's allowed to have. You send his original birth certificate, his original Social Security card. Here's his change of clothes that he can have. And when he gets to the processing center, then they send all that stuff back to you. You get all that stuff back once they have copied it and completed that process. And as he left, as we prepared for that, the Lord gave me a scripture, and it's in Second Timothy 1:12, and it says, "I know whom I have believed, and I am persuaded that he is able to keep
That's right.
that which I have committed to him until the day."
Mhm.
And in my book, I write until the day he comes home, right? And
Yes,
we just
yes.
didn't know where he was gonna be and how hard it was how emotional. I don't think John nor I nor Ben realized how emotional it was gonna be. We took, and when you grow up in a small town, and I'm sure this could be for anybody who's from our county or any of the counties, around us, our children grow up so sheltered and protected
Mhm.
from, city life,
Right.
and we probably do them a disservice by not knowing the ways of the world, right? And who to trust and who not to trust and how to pick those people. And those are hard lessons to learn.
Yes.
And we spend our life protecting our children. And, Ben grew up in a county where he knew everybody and everybody knew him.
Sure.
You're Betsy's kid, you're John's kid, you're Greg's brother, I mean,
Yeah. Even his
and
grandparents,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
and so everything was fine. You have very limited contact when they're in basic training. And so, he left the first part of August, and I was working at that point in another job, and we had gone to a training, and we were in a room, in a hotel room there, and we'd stepped out to have breakfast the morning of 9/11, right? And not knowing what was going to happen, we watched as the news flashes come on, and we all say, "Where were you that day? Where were you that day when 9/11 happened?" That's where I was. I was at a training, and I watched our world change that day, right? And I knew as I stepped away and went back upstairs to my room, and I just sobbed and cried, not only for the people that were on there, but I knew that our country would go to war. There would be retaliation, and my child was already there.
Oh
It's
gosh.
not like I could say, "Wait, whoa, stop the bus." Not my child, bring him home.
Yeah.
Bring him home. And I knew then that things had changed. And so over the course of the next couple days, the military broke tradition and they let kids call home because they felt like the kids needed reassurance
Yeah.
and the parents certainly needed reassurance that our little kids, these little whippersnappers
Huh.
that are just barely 18. Ben turned 18 in June and left in August, and there he was in basic training during 9/11.
That's what I
And
was gonna ask if he had finished basic training yet, or he
yeah,
was in the midst of it. I mean, he
mhm,
was okay.
mhm.
Okay.
And we weren't sure that, you go down, you're invited to go to all the ceremonies, and we made all those trips and we did all those things. And but you just knew in the back of your mind, you just knew as the events were going to unfold that we were going to
Yeah.
go, there would be retaliation for 9/11.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it would be executed by the people in our military,
Yeah.
right? You just knew that's how it was
Yeah.
gonna happen.
Yeah.
And, and so, when, and Ben finished, basic training, and he had such good, drill sergeants. He just had such good people. And of course, he got to learn that some people will steal things from you and some people will lie to you. He got to see all those pieces
Mhm.
of society that we try and protect our children from. But again, there's nothing you can do. It's not like you can go
Right.
down to Fort Jackson and say, "I'm going to see Ben Morris."
Yeah. Yeah.
Bring that private specialist kid out
Mhm.
here to me. His
Yeah.
mama needs him. And, and so, but we transitioned and we did as good, I think, as we could. And
Mhm.
as we watched him, then he, once you completed your training, it's called MOS, and you complete your training after basic training, then you're given an MOS, and that's what you're going to do. Okay, it's your vocation within the military, because the military life is really just, a whole lot like a normal job. Once they're through that, they just get to do lots of other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so
Now
yes, he was going to do mechanics. So
okay.
that was, yeah. Hmm.
So when he's in the military though, now
Hmm.
this might be more of when he's deployed, but when he's working, like you said, a regular job, but in or for
Hmm.
the military, do you have access to him? Like, can you call him anytime? Can he call you anytime?
No,
No.
no,
So
no.
it's still there's designated times for
Yeah,
contact. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
And even
And
to see him, like if you went there or for him to come home, you can't just say, "Hey, we're coming down to
mm-mm,
see ya."
no,
No.
no, no, you
Okay.
can't get on the military installations where they are,
Okay.
and so, you have to have, there's a lot of protocol to being able
Okay.
to, and you understand that,
Yeah.
and certainly after 9/11, we locked down,
That's
all of
right.
our,
That's
yeah,
right.
it
I
it
bet it was
changed,
even more so.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it changed how we gave access to people,
Yeah.
within the
Yeah.
military bases. But they bring him home, so it's an admirable career. And they would,
Yeah.
he would get, short little terms, and we could go pick him up, and they would give him a pass, and you could go see him. And but you can only be so many hours away, right? And so we couldn't make the threshold from South Carolina to
Yeah.
West Virginia. So my mother lived in North Carolina, so we could go to the Carolinas, and
Yeah.
we could get him. My stepfather was an ex-military, so he had a military
Good.
ID. He could
Yeah.
get onto the base to get Ben, and he could bring him back. And so yeah, and
Interesting.
you learn lots of things. So yeah.
That's true. I mean, I told you that when we talked on the phone, there was a lot I
Mhm.
didn't know. I've always very much respected military. My dad instilled that in us in a great way, very much respected men and women of the military. But there's just a lot you don't know until
Mhm.
you walk through it, as you
Mhm.
have. So he's in the military, he gets his assignment, he's working.
Yep.
9/11 has occurred. You kind of know what's coming. So, can we talk about when the call comes in, or what does that look like? Does he call you and say, "Hey, mom and dad, I'm getting ready to get deployed," or what does that process look like?
It's activating your unit. Your unit's been activated,
Okay.
and so there's a protocol then that they put in place so that that your unit is going to be called up, and you're going to be on the move, and they have this window of time then that they are permitted to be able to have the time to come home to speak to your family. And there's a lot of things that you have to get ready. Ben wasn't married then, so John and I, we had to put checking accounts, and they had to be things
Yeah.
like that. We had to put because there wasn't going to be anybody there to make a car payment and things like that. So we had to get a power of attorney. We had lots of different things you had to do, because he didn't have anybody that was going to be on this side that was going to be able to do that. And the first time he went, Maxetta, really, truly, I had no idea what we were going to face and what this was really going to look like. And how difficult this was going to be, right? How difficult
Yeah.
this was going to be for us. And I can only imagine how hard it was for him, because
Yeah.
Ben was always, family oriented, family first, God, country, and family, and that was just his life. And he was always so cognizant of that. And family gatherings and those events were how we marked our history for our family. And so as he got ready to deploy, he was in Texas. And so, you know, John and I went down in February, and we got to see him there in Texas before they deployed for that first time. That was in February. And then it's just like, hurry, hurry, hurry. And then it's wait, 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 we're not going yet. We're not going yet. We're not going yet.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, we weren't really sure of the exact date. And then the other side to that is that they can't say those things over the phone to you. Like, they can't call you and say, hey, we're leaving. We're going to leave on April the 3rd at 6
Yeah.
o'clock. They can't,
Yeah.
they couldn't do that. That we were so concerned that people could hear the conversations, and had to protect our military as we were flying them in, right? All these protocols and things around that. And so, and I have it listed in my Bible. And of course, I just had to go to God, because here is my child, and you're going to take him away, and you're going to take him to another country. And yeah, you probably have done a really good job of teaching him, but you're still going to take my child away. And that was really the most difficult thing that I know that John and I, as parents, that we ever had to face through parenting,
Mhm.
was that day that he was deployed. And Ben didn't go one time, he went 4 deployments, right?
Did
But the
everyone hear that? Betsy and her family, Ben was deployed 4 different times over his military career, correct?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
not only is Ben being deployed, her family's walking through this journey 4 separate times, right?
mhm, mhm. And it's so hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
So he left the first time, and I have it in my Bible, right?
Mhm.
4/27/03, and and um, Greg had an event at the school and being called, right? And he's like, "Mom, this is the last time, you know, um, like this is we're leaving." And you just all you can say to them is reassure them of your love for them, to trust God. Trust God. Son, I have instilled this in you. Trust God, and know that we are going to be here for you no matter what happens, no matter what you have to face. We will be here for you. We will be strong. And I told you that one of the steps that they have soldiers do for each deployment is that they have them write a letter, and no parent of a military person ever wants to open that letter, the contents of that letter. And it's the letter that you leave, the words that you would want to say to those people that you've left behind in the event that you don't get to come home. And um, I thank God throughout that time that we never had to open the letter.
That's
We
right.
never
Mhm.
had to open the letter.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that it was as hard as it was for us to just to put that together in our mind. I can't imagine 18 years old,
Right.
uh, and trying to, well, he was 19 at that time, and
But
when
so
he left,
young, trying to express
yeah,
that. I mean, at
yeah,
19, I
yeah,
have two that have passed 19 and one that is 19. I don't even know if they can fully grasp, like, what would you say if you could
yeah,
never speak to your loved ones again? What would you say? But here he is. I imagine him at 19 in that situation looks much more mature than my 19-year-old in college, because of the training, because of the structure, and because of, I think, he knew what he was going into, maybe not exactly, but I mean, he knew, "Hey, I'm being deployed, like, this is serious. This is"
mhm,
yes, that's certainly,
mhm,
that's intense. When you talked to me about the letter when we were talking on the phone, it just,
mhm,
I mean, I could barely speak. I thought, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that's
mhm.
one letter you do not want to receive."
You
Yeah,
ever want to get that.
yeah,
And, our local VFW and, places, did a great job of educating us as parents, spouses. There were lots of people there, and, I shared with you that you can become, you become Blue Star families when they're deployed,
Blue
and
Star
so
families, yes.
Blue Star families, and they gave you a little blue star, you could put it in your window, and that had come through time at different events and different wars that we fought. And I didn't realize how hard this was going to be, but we watched this play out on TV, and you could watch every night. You could
Gosh,
watch CNN every night, and you could watch the news every night. And we didn't have, it wasn't like live stream from your phone,
no, but still
but
so much
you
information.
still,
I hadn't even
yeah,
thought about that. There's just,
yeah,
oh gosh. So
yeah.
how did you manage that?
Well,
Did you watch, or did you shut it off, or how did you navigate that?
and, John was still working away, and, the day that Ben called to say goodbye the first time, he couldn't get a hold of his dad, he was at work, and so he called the house, right? No cell phones, we weren't living by cell phones then, so he just called the house phone, and, yeah, um and we watched it day, and I would just watch so intently, like, I would get up in the morning and I would watch any footage that would have on the war, and just hopefully you would see your son or your loved one in there, and you don't realize how that plays on your psyche, right? And it was Greg one day that walked in and turned the TV off, and he was like, "Enough. You cannot do this," because you know, it's not that I wasn't walking in faith, it was just that my heart was so heavy. It was just
Sure.
so heavy. And the Lord had given me a scripture, and I will read that to you. And, this was just my scripture that I had to go to the Word of God because there was nothing I could do to stop the progress of where we were. And you couldn't stop history from being made, right? These are events, world events that are going to change our lives. And so the Lord gave me a scripture, and it's in Samuel. And it says, and I'm looking at chapter 16, verse 18, and a mighty man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a handsome person, and the Lord is with him. And I would write those scriptures down and I would put them in the refrigerator, and I had them in a bookmarker form, and I just had them in 2 or 3 places, and I would just carry those. But you just became overwhelmed when you would watch on TV and you would see, because the media loves to show the pictures, and the more graphic they can get, the better they like it. And then you realize you watch these attacks and you go to bed at night and you lay down and you're like, wait a minute, there's somebody with a gun and a weapon, an RPG, a grenade, or whatever weapon it is, and their goal is to kill my child. And there's no one more precious to us than our children. And for the thoughts of what that was like, how, and no contact, like, no contact, no contact. If you were fortunate enough, he would have to go to bed, and there would be a time allotted for you, and they would wake you up. It didn't matter to them what time. It could be 3 a.m. over there, and um, and that would be your time, right? And so they would try and call, and so it didn't matter. He tried really diligently to try and call and to keep track of us, and it was sketchy to say the least. If you could hear him, but at least you knew he was okay. And again, not allowed to say where you are, not allowed to say where you're traveling, not allowed to give anything that says, other than I'm okay. I'm okay. Um, and so my salvation was Greg stepping in and saying, stop this. You cannot watch this every moment that you're awake, waiting to see him. It's making you, you're just thinking those thoughts, and you're keeping that. And I think the first deployment was probably, the learning part of it was without a doubt the hardest. And, um, but you just had to hold on to the word of God, because there just was nothing else physically that we could hold on to, right? It's not like I could go there and get him, and he, you know, he just had minor little things that would happen, and they didn't have, all the first aid stuff and maybe things, that medicine that you would think they would have. And that first deployment, there was such a vast difference between the first time he was deployed and the last time he was deployed, right? Um, and the accessibility to the mess hall and those things, it was such a vast difference between those, but in that span, and moving supply lines and things there, and they could take better care of our soldiers. So my goal was to make him understand how much we loved and missed him. And so my therapy was not only the word of God, right, but it was these boxes that we were allowed to mail, right? And so you would mail these APO, and you have this little, right, you have a box, a square box, a flat rate box, APO box from the United Postal Service. And you would fill that box, right?
Yeah.
I could fill a box like you just can't even imagine. And so that became my outlet and my therapy. I would go and so, you might get, beef jerky, and you might put in a book, and you might have, a packs of gum, and you never knew if they were going to make it, for sure, right? Because so many of them are lost. So, and you would, but that was my world, was to make sure that he had things that wherever he was out doing, when he came back, there was a box from home. And certainly Christmas and those milestones in our lives, were times that were so hard, and the losses greater of their presence being with you during that time. And so everything we would do, we would take pictures, and it's not, we didn't, like, you weren't sending them on your phone. Like, you were literally taking pictures, going and having them printed and sending them.
In the old days. Yeah.
That's how we used to do it.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you would get something from him. Now, I didn't realize until recently, when I was going through some of those old letters and things, by golly, Ben Morris never wrote his mom. He wrote every address on his letter was to his father. And I'm like,
Hold on.
yeah. So, but it wasn't an easy thing,
Sure.
but it was a very proud moment for us.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that is,
It's
yes. Yeah.
and you become very keenly aware. And I worked, and then when I went to work at Camp Caesar, we instituted, we observed a Red Shirt Friday, and red means remember everyone deployed, RED, red.
Yeah.
Red Shirt Friday, and that's still a national campaign. You can still do that today. We don't have as many deployed people, but during the
Yeah.
height of the war, we did.
Mhm.
And so we did that at the camp. We made all of our T-shirts on Fridays were red. We encouraged all of the campers to wear red with us in support of our military, but not only to support them, through wearing red, but pray for these people, pray for these families. I met so many families and so many mothers, particularly, who couldn't understand why John and I weren't, we weren't self-medicating. We weren't on antidepressants. We were not on anxiety pills. I never had to do that. I'm not gonna tell you that there weren't moments that I probably should have been. If you had seen me in a Walmart and I'm trying to do this, quote, "shopping," right, for these boxes, and I would just, this overwhelmingness would just come on me, and I would just miss him so much.
Oh, yeah.
And I would just start to cry, right? And, like, I would just have to leave everything in the buggy and walk away outside or to the bathroom, compose myself. And I had those episodes, and it could be the easiest thing, it could be one of Ben's favorite foods, and it would just put me and it's, but those were the hardest days. And one day I was coming back home, and I came across the Bolair Strait, right? And just as I was started down the straight, and you look up at the mountains, and I heard the voice of the Lord remind me of a scripture in my heart. I lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord.
Mhm.
And we say this, my help comes from the Lord. And that's when I knew that I had to become more earnest in my prayer time to God. And how do you trust God with the most important thing in your life that you had, and it's your children? And parents have to do it all the time, for whether they're in a hospital or they're away at school or wherever they are. We do it all the time. And this was harder. It was only harder because of the visuals on TV, and we would watch those coffins come off of those airplanes with a flag over them, and I couldn't let my mind go there. I could not say, if this happens to be in, we're gonna play this song at his funeral, we're gonna I just could not go
No.
there. And the nighttime, I thought, was probably the hardest, and you would just have to go to those, "I will lift up my eyes to the hills, from whence comes my help. My help comes from the Lord. The Lord is able to keep that which I have committed unto you. You are faithful, God." And it will, because you have no recourse, they wouldn't let me go there and get him.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I mean, you couldn't protect him. You had no say so on,
Yeah,
no, I don't want my son placed there. Let's put him
yeah,
somewhere else. That's what I was thinking of as a mom. We're caretakers. So as
mhm,
I was thinking about you packing those boxes, at least, you want
mhm,
to provide some sort of care, but then you also want to protect them and you want them safe and you want them to be and have what they want, but
mhm.
you no longer have a say so in any of that. So it is
No,
fully trusting the Lord. I mean, those are not just words, those are not just suggestions. I watched you walk it out like you did it. I mean, you had to guard what your ears heard, what your eyes
Mhm.
see, and what come out of your mouth, I
Yes.
mean, so yeah, that's intense, but I want everyone to hear that you didn't get through this on your own strength.
Oh gosh, no.
It was the strength of the Lord, and you had to continue, and John as well. You had to continue to live your lives. Like, you had jobs, you had responsibilities.
Mhm,
You had another child still that
mhm.
needed attention, and I don't know how old Greg was. Was he in high school
He
or
was yeah,
college?
he would have started his freshman year, when Ben, was there,
Oh,
so
yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
so
freshman year of high school?
yeah,
Yeah.
mhm.
So you had all of that too to focus on.
Yeah.
Woo. So let's just tap into that a minute there, Mama Morris. How do you I don't know what terminology I wanna use. How do you divide your attention to make sure you're celebrating and walking with one through high school? But I would imagine 24/7, your mind is on
Yep,
Ben,
yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's a balancing act,
Right.
I think the Lord sends so many people in our path. We
Yeah.
were surrounded by such a good church family,
Yes.
and on those days that you were just overwhelmed, you just knew that the Lord laid you on somebody else's heart,
Yeah.
and they prayed for you that day that you were just so overwhelmed with it, and yeah, I'm so thankful for my church family. I would not have made it if it wasn't for
Right.
the people that God placed in my life
Mhm.
all along. My family, John's family, our church families. There were so many people, and I never took it for granted that they prayed.
Right.
And people like you, and if it came to your heart that day to pray, that's the reason I think it's so important when somebody comes to our minds and we haven't seen them or been around them, and yet there they are right there that day, to just pause, and take that moment to pray for them or to reach out to them,
Mhm.
and minister to them. And I really tried to do that. I think Claudia Toothman's son,
Yeah.
Frank, graduated with Ben, and they were deployed pretty close the same time.
Yeah.
So, it was like we shared a special bond.
Mhm.
And then Robert Wilson, we call him Camel,
That's
he was
right. Yeah. Mhm.
and so we had West Virginia has such a high rate of young people who have entered into the military and, have done admirable. But I will tell you this is as shocking as we do you listen to the, like at the county fair, and other when they'll do the placing of the wreath,
Mm.
and they do the reading of the names, right? We don't read any names of losses to Webster County during the Gulf War, during that time. God is so faithful.
Mm.
And you can think it's a little thing. It's not a
No.
little thing. It
No.
is not a little thing. I am overwhelmed every year when we watch that and we listen to that my child's name isn't on there. And, I shared with you that when you have a family member that doesn't come home from a deployment, you become a gold star parent. And and they rightly so, they should be acknowledged, but I don't ever want to be that. That's not what I wanted to be. And it's again, that's the battle in your mind, and you're taught to cast down those things. You can't let your mind go there. And there's nobody else that can walk that out but you. There is no one else that can walk that out but you. You know, and Oh, so let's fast forward in Ben's military career, right? And so, we get through the first deployment, we go through a second, a third, we get to the fourth one, and I am just almost so mad at God. I can't believe it. I cannot believe that you've got lots of people in this military. You do not need my child. He started a family at that point,
Yeah.
and he's a beautiful baby girl at home. You can't take him. You can't take him. And but yet he did. And but God's ways are so much higher than ours, and you just keep thinking, why? What good could it possibly do for you to take my child again? and have to, I don't know if it was for his safety, for him, or if it was just maybe selfishly being me, not wanting to go through this. I
Mhm.
don't want to do this
Listen,
again.
no one could blame you for that. I mean, no one could. Again,
And,
it's honorable, indeed it is. But as a mom, yeah,
whew,
I feel you on that. I understand
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yep. And, but, and he did, he left in 2010,
yeah.
and, um, and he went back, and that was his last tour, that he did. But, it's when as I said, we live, forward and we understand backwards. And, when I was asked one time to come to the high school and talk about, at a veterans program that they did there. And so, Ben had learned along the way to write, right? And and it was the teachers, it was Miss Gilliam, it was Mary Ross that taught him at the high school how to write, right? It was Mike Gray and 2 years of welding
Mhm.
that taught me
Skills that he
and
used.
yeah,
Yeah.
how to construct and reinforce his Humvee so
Mhm.
that it wasn't, as, vulnerable out there in those attacks. It's those things that you don't know that God's preparing you for all along the way. And so, here I am praying over this child, God, fill him with wisdom and let your grace and your favor be upon him. And we don't realize that for God to do that, you don't get to call the shots.
Yeah,
Guess what, mama?
that's the part, man.
Dang, God, that's not fair. Like,
Right.
I know what he means,
Mhm.
And and so, God and I the whole time been in his last appointment. I really struggled with it. I really, really struggled because I just didn't want to. It just didn't seem fair that he needed to go a fourth time. But I'm so grateful to God that he taught me that even when every element of my body says no, 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 and you fight against it, God says, I'm using this for his good and
Yeah.
for, and for Ben's good and for God's glory. And you just have to remember that. And you just have to stand, even when you don't completely understand and don't agree. It doesn't change the word. It doesn't change the situation. And so, Ben came home from that, and his next time he went, he went to drill sergeant. So he became a drill sergeant. Then he became the teacher of the soldiers, right? That they would continue to deploy, and he knew because he had such a vast knowledge of the military lifestyle and he knew the skill sets that these young 18-year-olds coming into the military needed to know before they were deployed. And that became priceless. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
How can you, other than going through it, how can you ever learn that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
How can you learn that? And there is no way other than just going through that.
Mhm.
And so, here we are then later, and then you have to kind of go to God and say, oh, here I was. I thought you were just really being mean to me and being mean to my family. And, because you have to be honest with God.
Oh, yes.
Sometimes we go through things that are just really, really darn hard to explain. And Ben became so good at what he does there.
Yeah.
His next deployment. And John and I have been so blessed. You have to look at the blessings, right? So everywhere he's been, we've been really blessed to be able to go.
Yeah.
And so and South Carolina, I would like for him to stay there. We could get in
Yeah.
a vehicle, we could drive down, see him, see the kids, and he was there, but it was hard. That was a hard life too. Drill sergeant, if it's possible to be any harder than being deployed, it's pretty darn hard. That was, taxing on him. And I hear my husband coming home. You might get to see him after all.
Hey.
And sorry. And so we'll fast forward. Then he goes to Colorado, right? And so that was
Mm,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. He had been in Kansas. We'd been there. That was good. We've been to Texas. We've been, these places that he was. But the military life for couples is very hard
Yeah.
and requires a lot of compassion and love.
Sure.
And, and you know, Ben's wife returned to Hawaii with the kids, and Ben's desire was so great to be there, but the military life was what he needed. And so he came out of active military. He went into the reserves, and he is able to still be there. And then you can be at the base where you want to be, right? So where is he today?
Yeah.
He is in Hawaii,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so, yeah, and he's, he's been there now for quite some time, and doing really good. And so just to, just to share with you, not understanding the path that God needed him to be on, he needed him to know what the elements were that he needed to teach young soldiers to
Yeah.
come in. We'll never know on this side of heaven what that impact was that had. Ben had really good soldiers that were with him, and he had some, you know, people that you would have wished that weren't there. But
Yeah.
by the same token, we don't get to pick those
We
people
don't.
in our kids' lives now. We don't.
And
And
one
so,
thing I've learned, and I know you too, God doesn't waste anything. So
it's
all of
not
those
wasted.
years, I mean, it's continual preparation for what's coming next, what's coming
Mhm,
next.
mhm,
So I'm sure that Ben benefited his soldiers more than we'll ever know. I mean, both
mhm,
um military wise, but I'm sure personally as well.
mhm,
So
mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because, part of what they tell them in times of war is that you have to keep things stable on the home front because it gives soldiers the ability to focus on the enemy that they're really fighting and not the enemy that they think is, at home, and how hard that is for soldiers,
Yeah.
to keep their minds set on what they have to do, what is in front of you to do, and Ben was very fortunate in that he got to do some courses that they offered through, I think it was through Penn State, and it was on teaching resiliency, which I find fascinating. But how do you teach resiliency?
Mhm.
But he is now, he is a resiliency trainer. That's what
Mhm.
he does, part of what he does. Had he not had the events, had we not had the skill sets that he um, had he not survived those things, he would not be where he is today. So today, Ben writes and implements the new training standards for soldiers coming into the military. But I have to tell you this one thing because I'm a braggy kind of mom, just a
Yeah.
little bit, a
Yeah,
little
that's
bit.
okay. Yeah.
And, when Ben made the transition over to Hawaii, and it just didn't seem like things were going according to plan, right? So, my mother had moved over there to help him take care of the kids while he was there. And I got to saying, and you had mentioned this earlier with our mouth, right? I had got to saying, it just seems like nothing ever comes together for Ben. And I didn't realize how many times a day I would say it. You'd say it, you'd have that little check in your spirit, right? But you continued on with the conversation. And if you're not careful, you can become numb to that, right? How important is that, those words? And I would say it in different ways, right? We take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Yep, we say it in those kinds of terms all the time. It doesn't feel like everything, like something should be coming together for him. Like,
Yeah.
look at the
He never
price he's
catches a
paid. Look
break.
what he's
Yeah.
given. Look what he's given to his country,
Yeah.
and you want those things. And the Lord just reminded me to stop saying that. Stop saying that. That's speaking the problem and not speaking the solution, right?
Right.
Speaking the solution, the end result. And so, I called my mom one day and we were talking about that, when she was there. And I said, we're going to stop saying that. We cannot stop saying that.
Right.
And he was just really going through a really hard time, Ben was. And so we started praying. All things are working together for Ben, for his good and for God's glory. All things are working together for Ben, for his good and God's glory. And I just wouldn't come off of it. And I refused to say things are not working out for Ben. It doesn't look like it's coming together. The plan's not, I just refused. I refused in any context. Now that's a spiritual fight you have to fight yourself.
Sure.
You have to listen to the voice of God on the inside of you and be led by that. And it wasn't long before, but from that point on, that they needed to select a candidate to participate in the warrior contest, right? And so, best warrior contest.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, of course, my son's the best warrior. And things didn't go good. When we started down this road, it just didn't look like that was going to, it didn't look like that was going to come together, right? And so, but Ben persevered.
Yeah.
And Ben's mama and his grandmother, talk about a lineage from God, right? So
Yeah.
we had my mother, me, Ben, and Ben's daughters, and they
Yeah.
were all praying, 4 generations
Yeah.
praying for Ben to do good, right? And Ben goes to this competition called the Best Warrior Competition, and lo and behold, he wins in the Pacific Rim, for the
Woo-hoo.
Pacific Rim.
Little
And
boy from Upper Glade, West Virginia.
we have just
Love it.
talked about that. We laugh about that all the
I
time,
love it. Mhm.
and we'll say that, when they had him, they took him to Samoa, the American side of Samoa, as a reward, right, for winning the competition. And he was there with the general, and he was introduced as the Pride of the Pacific. And Ben will laugh, right? And he'll say, the Pride of the Pacific from Cowan, West Virginia.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. No
And
limitations with God. There are no limitations.
yeah,
Demographics do not limit God. That's
do
right.
not limit God. And so, we are just so proud of his military career and what he's done. And he has told us now for the last 3 times, right? Every time, this is my last reenlistment. This is my last reenlistment. Well, he's still there. So he's been in the military since 2001. And God's hand has been on him the entire time. And
Absolutely.
without God, I yeah, I don't take one day of it for granted. I don't take one day of it for granted, and hard days, good days, but you can't take any of them for granted.
That's
And
right.
to those parents that are out there, if your child chooses a career in the military, be so proud and
Yes.
continually support them, and refuse to allow your mind to go to what could happen, but that's any scenario with any parent. We lay down in that bed at night, and there it comes, those thoughts, they want to creep in. You have to fight that,
That's right.
and then replace that thought with that scripture.
Mhm.
My eyes look to the hills, from whence comes my help. I will. If I look today and I see that scripture, and it's written in my Bible, for being when you're in Iraq, and I do my Bible, I intend to leave it to my children, when I leave this earth. I want them to go back through. I want them to see the power of the prayers that kept them safe. What delivered them? It wasn't their mother. It was God.
Mhm.
It was God,
That's right.
and so there you go.
That's right. Listen, I appreciate you sharing that. That's exactly what needed to be said tonight. So I want to, as we start to wrap things up, one, I agree with you. It's honorable. Though I can't imagine, here's what comes to mind. I've started 3 sentences now. Let's see if I can complete one. So if we're not careful in these situations, when people say, like, hey, we're joining the military, or my son's in the military, fear becomes the overwhelming
Mhm,
part of it, instead
mhm,
of the honor, the respect that is due.
mhm,
So I appreciate you sharing that with us. My hope is that others hear this and give our military the respect that they so deserve. We are living in the benefits of what they do every day. And
mhm,
so we're super thankful for Ben and for all of those ladies and gentlemen that have served and are serving in the military.
mhm,
And I appreciate you sharing your story, because it's tough stuff to go back to that. I mean, that's been years ago.
mhm.
and you walked through those emotions and you walk through that time with God. And sometimes it's tender to go back to those
Mhm.
memories and those thoughts. But three things I want you to answer for us. Um
Okay.
during your time that Ben was in the military, including when he was deployed, what did you learn about Betsy? What did you learn about
Ooh.
yourself? What did you learn about your son Ben? And what did you learn about God?
I think the hardest part, what I learned about me is that I had a plan, and as much as I loved Ben and I wanted him to do what I wanted him to do, that it was not the plan, that he chose, but I had to trust God
Mm,
regardless,
yeah,
regardless, and that was so hard. It's hard for any parent to walk through that.
yeah,
That was the hardest thing,
hmm,
was not going to get him.
yeah,
If you would have let me gone to Iraq, I would have went and got him. There
hmm,
was at least 3 occasions I would have bought the ticket and whatever you need me to do to get him, I would have went and got him,
yeah,
but they
yeah.
won't let you do that. Yeah, but, and I'm sure every parent would say that,
Sure.
that's the hardest part is that you have lost control of that situation. You do not get to make their decisions.
Yeah.
You don't even get to have an influence. You have to trust that everything you've put in them until this point is gonna come back out,
Yes.
and you have to trust God beyond any question of anything. You have to trust God in that. So, that's the hardest. What
Yeah.
was my next one? What did I learn about being?
About the Ben story. Yeah.
Oh, that, Ben loves to tell this story, and, he loved football. Ben avid football player, played football from the time he could go. He wanted to play football. He excelled at that, and, one of his first times home, he came back and he saw Coach Rogers, and he said, "Huh, two-a-days were tougher than basic training." And AJ will laugh and tell me that story to this
Aw.
day. And, Ben was more mature than I gave him credit for, more receptive to the hand of God being on his life, and has transformed into this loving father, husband, and military person who just desires to give back, right? And I never saw that part of I knew it's what he would always be, but it's so hard because even now he's still so far away, and, um, I will the hardest thing when Ben got home from one of his deployments, I give a plug here to the USO and to the people who helped fund that, and, one of his deployments when he came home and they flew into New York, the USO was there with cell phones, right?
Yeah.
And they gave them to these soldiers, and the first phone call he made was to me, and it was just like all the weight came off,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
he wa I don't think our children understand how much we love and care for them, like I said, I don't think they
I
realize.
agree.
I think that as parents of soldiers, our job is to pray, not only for the safety of your soldier,
Mhm.
but for the safety of the military. Like, I didn't pray for just Ben, I prayed for his unit, for his battalion, for his brigade, for wherever he
Those
was.
making decisions over them.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, I know
um,
you do,
and
yeah.
you have to be so vast and you have to be so diligent in that, and it's so hard when you're watching the images on TV to stay focused on your prayers, and, and so I think that was the hardest part, but Ben was always so resilient to that. He was always he could always look past it to what was gonna be next.
Hmm,
That's an attribute that it's instilled in him today. Um, But that's what I learned about him, is that God is so faithful. Ben is so resilient, and can rise to meet whatever the demands are on him.
That's great.
Woo.
Wonderful.
What was my last one?
Well, you answered it. God is so faithful. What did you learn about God?
So faithful.
Yeah, yeah,
God loves,
yeah,
and we say it a lot,
yeah.
faith works by love, right?
Mhm.
Faith works by love. It was my love for my child
Yeah,
that made my faith in God work.
right, right.
It really was. It was just desperation. There just was, I couldn't tell you how many tears we cried. And I do believe that. I do believe that God does hold our tears and he'll bring them back to us,
Yeah,
I do believe that. And but those will be, tears of joy now, because we're on the other side of that.
yeah,
And so, if you've got parents who are out there and they're trying to figure the road forward, my gosh, make contact with some of the resources that are out there, and keep contact with the military that have come home, that have fought these battles, because they fight that battle, they continue to fight in
yeah.
their minds,
I,
and
yeah, it doesn't stop when
keeping
they return
contact with
home.
them.
I mean,
Yeah,
you're right.
keeping
Yeah,
contact with them. It is, they have paid
yeah.
such a price, and, as citizens that, reap the benefits,
Mhm.
we owe them so much,
So
and so,
much. Yes.
yeah, so there we
I
go.
agree.
Thank you for this
Listen,
time. Thank you for letting me share. What a good topic. Thank you for
thank
choosing.
you. I appreciate your willingness to share and for joining us. I truly believe others will learn from this as well. I did. Listen, I thought I was all like, I know a lot from our prep call. Then you dropped that bomb on me about them rolling up. I didn't know what. But
No,
no,
no, not my baby.
whoa. I mean, but yeah, and I'm excited to tell the listeners that we're hoping in the future to have Ben as a guest as well. So you'll get to hear his side of military life and his experiences and what he so chooses to share with us. But we appreciate Betsy, and I think that everyone would agree that you heard all throughout the conversation about the faithfulness of God, the importance of prayer, the importance of a church family, the importance of a support system. So utilize
Yeah.
uh, your support system when you're
Yeah.
going through things like this. You're not meant to carry it alone. And yeah, so thank you so much, Miss Betsy. Thank you. I appreciate it. And
Veterans Day's coming up. Get out
yeah,
there and thank a soldier.
yeah,
Just thank 'em. When you
yes,
see them when you pass them in the
that's
mall
right.
and they have the hat on, just all
Thank you.
you gotta do is say, "Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for your service." I
yeah,
just wanna thank you for that, and
yeah,
they are so humble. Most of them
mhm,
are just so humble when you meet them and say thank you, and their gratitude is just overwhelming.
yes.
Um,
And I'm going to echo some of what she said. Let's do better. Let's give the respect where the respect is due when they're playing the national anthem. When you see someone out and
yeah,
they have some sort of marker that they're a veteran, take the time out to respect them and be teaching our younger generation as well.
mhm,
Betsy was a Sunday school teacher at the time my kids were young enough when Ben was in some of the deployments, I believe, and I
mhm,
can remember she taught them so much
mhm,
that I had failed to teach them as a parent. So let's teach the younger generations about the respect due to our
mhm.
military men and women. Yeah, so let's honor them and give them the honor that they so very much deserve. But
What a
okay,
great way
so
to end our
I'm go-
lesson. Thank you.
yes, I'm going to turn you loose so you can visit with your husband. And again, we appreciate you sharing your story with us. I'm glad we
You're
got.
gonna pick another topic. I'm gonna come back. You and I are good talkers. We love
Now,
it, don't we?
I'll tell you what, now that Betsy, I could have a few topics to get her on here, and I just may. I might be looking at my new co-host right there. Right? See,
So,
so
Maxie and I go way back, and we love it. I
we
love her.
go
I love
way
her
back,
with my whole heart. So,
and I've shared some on my YouTube channel that people earn the right to have an opinion in my life. Betsy has that right. When Betsy, she can call me out on things. She can call me up on things. She can celebrate with me, rein me in when needed. She has been consistent in my life, and I know that when she's correcting me or um, reining me in, whatever you want to call it, it's from a place of love, and it's true. It's right. I mean, it's right. It is, and you need people like that in your life. So surround yourself with lots of Betsy's, and her
Yeah.
laugh is it's contagious too. I mean, it's a good time. So, okay, well, thank you so much. We'll wrap it up.
Listeners,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you, listeners. Love on the military personnel. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Maxetta.
Thank you. We'll do it again next week, friends.